Let's look and try to understand how does the box model works, and first of all, what is the box model? So how does the layout works? Most of us have a lot of trouble when the time comes to lay out stuff in the screen using CSS. How does it work? What are the guidelines that we use to help us? So the first rule is everything is boxes. We should recognize all elements rendered by a browser as boxes. All elements means, in this text for example, how can we see boxes here? So paragraphs are boxes, and the list is also another box. The list item is then another box. Finally, these elements that have no dimensions, they run along with the text, are also boxes, inline boxes. So bottom line, everything is a box. Boxes, on the other hand, have dimensions. They have height and width. They have border width. They have padding, so it's an internal margin. And they have also margins, which is an external margin. Do you actually know a very useful difference between margin and padding? If the element isn't in line, the margins between elements, they overlap. Meaning, in this case, for example, if this one was specifying that the margin bottom was 5 pixels, and the one below was mentioning that the margin top was 10 pixels. If both elements were blocked, we are going to see later on what that means. It means that the distance between them would be the biggest margin. So in this case, 10 pixels would be the distance between them. On the inspector, we have this kind of dashboard, and here we can see the dimensions of the element, and we can see the padding, the border, and the margin. We can see all of this. And something that is really interesting is all of these elements are editable. So we can just come here and change and see the effect and see if this was what we were looking for. So regarding paddings help you to let the content breathe. Meaning, if on the first example it looks very tight, but if we give some padding, it will have space. We often want to play with dimensions, using borders to give elements some relevance, using padding to let their content breathe. And when we are doing so, we just define the width, the height of the element, and then we define, for example, in this case, that the border is 5 pixels orange, and that the padding is 20 pixels. And we actually wanted this element to be side by side with another element that was 200 pixels by 200 pixels. That's why we set the height, the width and the height for 200. But what happens is the left element is bigger. Why? You'll probably remember that most time dimensions don't work as you are expecting. So is it really this difference? Is it because the right element is taller? Why? So the W3C box model works as the follow. You define the height of the element. However, the visible height of the element is this one. So this means that for the height of the element, we are adding the height that we define on the code, plus the padding top and padding bottom, plus the border top and the border bottom. That's why the previous element was bigger. And the same thing happens with the width, in which we define the width, and then the padding left and padding right are added, plus the border left and the border right. So this is exactly the same thing as a person. A person can be 8 feet tall, then if it's with some shoes and a hat, that person will look taller. This is called the W3C box model. The correct way to do this is that we would have, for the elements to have the same height, we would have to decrease from the height that we are setting the border and the padding. And this way, the element will be 200 pixels high. Why are we taking off from the height 50 pixels? Because we have to sum the bottom and the top padding and the bottom and the top border width. Something that you should be aware as well is that when you are defining an element and you say that the height is 20 pixels, the padding is 20 pixels and the border 20 pixels, the visible height of the element will be 100 pixels. However, we can change the way the box model works. How? With the CSS tag. We can use the box sizing to border box, meaning that when we define the height of the element, this will be the visible height. All the padding and the border will grow to the inside.